Hey there, I'm Verity Songon and this is the Confident CEO podcast, the show that takes you behind the scenes of starting and running your small or not so small business. We will cut through the misinformation and bad advice about starting and running a business and give you actionable tips and advice that you can implement to grow, scale and achieve your business goals. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Confident CEO podcast. And before we get into today's episode, which is all about shiny object syndrome, which I think is a really, really important subject to cover in business, I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who has listened to the podcast, because at the beginning of February, we reached over 1,000 downloads for the podcast, which I am just so excited about. And before I jump into shiny object syndrome, I just want to talk a little bit about consistency. I did an Instagram story on this when we hit 1K followers, 1K downloads for the podcast, because consistency is so important. As we all know, I started this podcast on a bit of a whim, not really sure where it was going to go. Don't get me wrong, I have now dived into the strategy. I know what I'm doing with this podcast. We are, strategized. We know where it's going. It's got a plan, etc. But the point is that when I started, I didn't have the biggest following on social media, didn't have the biggest, reach in terms of marketing the podcast and all this kind of thing. And for the first few episodes, in fact, for the first couple of months, I was not really sure where it was going to go. Because, a lot of my downloads were in the single figures. I was really excited when I hit double figures for downloads per episode, to be quite honest with you. That was quite exhilarating. And I was still getting really excited when I woke up and saw that just one person had listened to the podcast, which wasn't me. So the point is, though, is that for the first 7 or so months, the progress was slow, but there was progress. I kept with the strategy. I kept putting it out there, kept marketing it, kept, showing up on social media to promote the podcast. And most importantly, I kept turning up every single week, with the exception of, I think, 2 weeks where it was just way too much and it was not going to happen. But with the exception of those 2 weeks, I turned up every single week and I produced content for the podcast. And as I said, the growth was it was there for the first 7 months or so, but then I hit the 7-8 month mark, and all of a sudden, you look at my Buzzsprout statistics, and all of a sudden the curve just goes up. It was then that we got to about mid-November, and that's when the results didn't just continue to skyrocket and pick up, but my God, they jumped up massively. They did again for December, and they have done again for January, the start of 2023. So I'm excited. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going. But the point that I'm making is that if I had given up within the first 2-3 months and thought, this isn't working, this isn't where I'm going to want it to go, I'm not getting millions of downloads, I've not turned into the next, I don't know, whoever with this huge podcast, then I never would have continued on this amazing journey that I'm on. And we all know that I love my podcast. I love the wonderful guests who give up their time to be interviewed and share their knowledge with you, our lovely audience. I love the editing. I love promoting the show. I just love everything to do with podcasting. I really, really do. It's so exciting. So the point is, though, is I wouldn't have reached 1K downloads if I hadn't stuck with it. I would not have reached getting to the top 250 entrepreneurship podcasts in multiple countries. We would not still, for the third week running, still be charting for the top entrepreneurship podcast. And I think we're now in the top 100. We were in the top 60 in the UK, the top 30 in Ireland. My point is that we would not be reaching these great chart topping stats without consistency. So what I would say is, if you're working on a project at the moment, it doesn't necessarily have to be podcasting. It could be growing your Instagram. It could be, growing a Facebook group. It could be getting sales in for your latest online course. Whatever it is, stick with it. Go with the consistency, because the more consistent you are, the more you continue to show up. People are building trust with you, remember. So if you put an offer out there and you don't immediately get, everyone signing up, you've only been advertising it for like a week. Well, people don't necessarily have that trust yet with you. So continue to, just continue to go with the consistency and keep revising your strategy, because I promise you, You can get there with consistency. When they say consistency is key, it's so, so true. But that's about consistency. And I've just enjoyed an incredibly lovely chocolate cupcake to celebrate 1K downloads, or just over 1K downloads. But I wanted to talk today about shiny object syndrome. And I think this feeds into the consistency, because so often in business, we are thrown all these different ideas left, right, and center on social media in particular, and through talking to people with sometimes unsolicited advice and opinions, of chasing the next thing. It's really easy to think to yourself, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do now. And no, this is the next best idea. And if I buy this course, it will transform my business. If I go and do this masterclass, all of a sudden I'll pull in all my clients and I'll be booked out. If I do this type of post on Facebook, my group will be up to, I don't know, however many followers or admins, whatever. You get my point. It's easy to chase shiny object syndrome. And what I would advise people on, and first of all, I am as guilty of this as the next person. I am constantly being like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. That's going to completely blow up my business. Or this is such a great idea. I'm going to get so much self-worth out of this, or so much self-improvement out of this. But what I've really started sitting with myself and doing is considering, what is the actual value that I'm getting out of whatever it is? Even if it's free, even if it's a YouTube video, what value am I going to get through the next 5 minutes, 15 minutes, however long the video is, watching that? And if it's not bringing value from a business point of view, is that just shiny object syndrome? Is it just me thinking, oh my gosh, if I research that, that's going to be great, but then I've wasted an entire day when I could have actually been putting in marketing efforts for getting clients in, or, income generating work where I actually bill clients, or whatever it is, or making content like this. The point is that shiny object syndrome is so easy to get caught up in. And this kind of relates to the podcast episode that got released in the first week of Feb, when we spoke to Lauren, the Instagram social media manager who specializes in Instagram. That's what I'm trying to say. And she was saying about how you've got to enjoy what you're doing in order for it to be, fruitful, and you've just got to enjoy what you're doing. And we were also talking about following people on Instagram and the toxicity of social media and all this kind of thing. And I think that's so true for shiny object syndrome as well. It's easy to get caught up in social media and being like, well, these 5 people are doing this, so therefore I need to be doing that course as well. Or these people have just bought this piece of equipment, this is going to do the same to my business. But then you've got to consider, well, are you in the same season of your life at the moment as them? Are you in the same stage of business as them? Have you been going for as long? Have they been going longer than you? Have you even got the same kind of business? All of these different things. And whilst a course might bring value to somebody else, it's not necessarily going to bring the same value to you. You've got to be thinking, do I actually need that information? Or am I just going down a bit of a rabbit hole? And as I said, I'm as guilty as the next person of being chased down a rabbit hole. I think it's really important, and this is why I love journaling as well. And, shameless plug for the Confident CEO journal there. But that's why I love journaling as well, because it really gets me thinking, do I need this? And what benefit or what value is it going to bring to me? And if it's related to the business, what benefit or value is it going to bring to me, to my business as well? And sometimes you need to get really tough and really real with yourself to think, actually, I don't need this. And then you need to go through the process of, but do I want this? And if I do want this, that's fine. Because we don't need, needs and wants are 2 completely different things. You think of, I was going to use this jumper as an example, but actually this is a maternity jumper, but I love it because it's so just big and baggy. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see my jumper. If not on the podcast, just imagine me wearing a massive baggy jumper, but I absolutely love this jumper. So the point was, I did need maternity clothes because I wasn't fitting into my other ones. But, let's go for these Post-it notes. I've got some Post-it notes in front of me. Do I need these Post-it notes? Well, not really, because I've got loads of other paper that I can write on. So, but did I want the Post-it notes? Yes, because they are bright pink, and then I can stick stuff on the walls, and it's brilliant. Yes, okay, that's not the same as, buying a new course, because they are much smaller and only cost a couple of quid. But the point is that, there's a need and a want. And sometimes we need to kind of, think with shiny object syndrome, is there a need to what I'm looking at, or is it a want? And once we've differentiated that want, it's also thinking, what's the value? So the value for buying Post-it notes for me is that it make me feel happy because they're bright pink, and we all know that I love pink, and I can stick them on the walls. So then it's very visual for me. So that's great. And, it's then thinking to yourself, well, if I get that course, is that a need or a want? And if it's a want, then what value is it bringing to me? And I think sometimes going through those processes and those thoughts of needs and wants can actually help you with the shiny object syndrome. And sometimes, do you know what? Sometimes the thought processes just never go away. The Cricut for me, I love my Cricut, is a little bit of, it's a printer, by the way, if anyone's wondering. It's a type of cut printer, before anyone's thinking that I've got an actual Cricut it's like living in a glass jar in my office. But the Cricut printer was, that was a bit of shiny object syndrome for me, because I do love crafting. It's not something that I do very much anymore, but it is something that I really love. And, to a degree, the Cricut was a bit of shiny object syndrome for me, because I'd, seen people using it in different Facebook forums, watching different YouTube videos and stuff. And I was there thinking, oh my gosh, that's going to completely transform my life. Do you know what? My life is exactly the same as it was before, but I do get joy out of using the Cricut and, doing different craft projects and what have you. Is it going to completely blow up my business? Probably not. You've probably noticed me talk about on Instagram a lot. I am going to be doing a sticker range. I'm so excited, and I'm playing around with different designs and what have you. And I kind of need the Cricut to do that. But, is it going to turn me into a millionaire overnight? No. Did I need it for my business? No, because I didn't need to launch a sticker range at the end of the day. But did I want it? Yes. Because did I want to launch stickers? Yes. And, to some people that might not make any sense, but it makes perfect sense to me. But the point is that I'm making, potentially very badly, is shiny object syndrome. We know that it's there. What I would suggest to you is, if you are feeling pulled towards buying something, which you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to solve all my problems, if it's a course, whatever it is just thinking, do I need this? Do I want this? And what value is it actually bringing? And am I going to be doing that and busy work? And we're talking about busy work next month. I've got Ellie Blakeney coming on, and we meant to talk about busy work. So keep an ear out for that episode. But am I just doing this to avoid doing work which is actually going to get me from A to B? Because that's the problem. Sometimes we go down a rabbit hole, we get things, and then we spend so much time and we're so busy doing these other things, but we're completely blindsided by this shiny object, because actually we could have taken that time to work on something which we've already got in process. So going back to the podcast again and talking about consistency, it could be this massive shiny object syndrome that I wanted to go on YouTube and put out YouTube videos earlier than I did. And I could have chased that, and I could have chased that. But actually that could have impacted on the strategies and the process that I've already got in place for the podcast. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to chase the shiny object syndrome of YouTube just yet, which is why, and a lot of people asked me last year, they were like, well, why are you not going on YouTube? I purposefully left it until the back end of 2023, I'm jumping ahead of myself, the back end of 2022 and the early months of 2023, because I wanted to get the strategies for the podcast absolutely down and know what I'm doing with those processes and what have you. So I'm going to sign off on that note. Let me know what you think about shiny object syndrome. What kind of shiny objects have you chased in your business or in your personal life? As ever, hit me up in the DMs on Instagram @VeritySongon, and I will look forward to hearing from you then.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, leave a rating and a review. Ratings and reviews help us to reach more people who want to build and scale their online course. So you're really helping to widen the support for our blogging community. To catch all of the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @VeritySongon. I'll see you next time. Happy content creating.